everybody, and welcome to this week's Bodacity Show. My name is Jeanette Anderson, and I am here with the fabulous Edina Adler. Welcome, Edina. I'm so happy you're here. Good to see you.
Thank you. And you are the fabulous Jeanette Anderson. I'm pleased to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
I appreciate it and appreciate you being here. And I'm going to give you, as usual, Edina's formal bio, and then we're going to ask her to tell us something juicy about herself that we wouldn't guess and why she does what she does. And then we'll get launching into this topic around 3 major mistakes that step parents make. I might sound a little scratchy and I will probably have to blow my nose a few times. I'm just getting over COVID, so I will be a little bit snotty throughout, but just bear with me, y'all, and we're all here to hear Edina anyway. So let me tell you a little bit about Edina first, and then we'll get rocking and rolling. So Edina Adler, LCSW, works with parents and couples to save their marriages so that they can create a more loving home for themselves and their children and stepchildren. She's trained in the world-renowned and research-based Gottman Couples Methods, as well as attachment-based couples therapy, was trained by the Stepfamily Foundation in New York, is a former Family Court Mediator, and uses mindfulness-based methods in her work, as well as tools learned from years of Buddhist meditation practice. It's a fascinating combination, so that's very cool. Welcome, and really important work. So tell us, Edina, something that we wouldn't guess about you or know about you from looking at your website or hearing your bio. What's something, and the more outrageous and juicy, the better.
I did a very big pivot in my life from trying to be an actress in New York in my 20s, failing miserably at it. There's a whole bunch of stories around that, to turns out you need an agent, to living in a Buddhist retreat center for 6 months where I didn't speak for the better part of that time. I got to my early 40s and realized I still didn't have kids and I still didn't have a family. I had had several relationships, some with people who had been previously married, but never actually got married. And then nearly 13 years ago, I met a wonderful man with 2 adorable children who were then 4 and 6 years old. I was in my early 40s and I thought I'd never find someone to raise a family with. And then I met this guy, and I'm blessed to have them in my life still. And less than a year after he and I got married, their mom lost custody for reasons I won't go into. And I became a stepmom overnight. And then I discovered that all my training as a social worker with foster youth, as a child custody mediator, divorce mediator, I thought I could handle anything, but I had no idea what I was in for. In any case, at a certain point, things turned around. I went to therapy. I got some support. I cut back on my hours in child welfare. And I realized that I went through a training to be a step family counselor. I realized that a lot of step parents don't have the support they need in the early stages especially in the early stages of the relationship where things can go really badly. I decided to go back to school and become a social worker. And then I became a therapist. Then I became licensed. And then I got this training in step family counseling to help other step families. Until that time, I've been helping couples who were not necessarily in a step family situation. But now I've kind of been zeroing in more and more on working with step families and step parents because there's such a lack of support and a shocking lack of knowledge about it, and no courses that I've seen in schools and psychology programs. So it's kind of surprising considering that more than half of the families now in the United States are step families. So you would think that everybody would know, right, about all the challenges and the pitfalls and the things you should know ahead of time and how to prepare for it properly. But that is not the case.
Yeah, so. It's true. There isn't a lot of education and training around it. And like you said, it's a huge number of people that it impacts.
Yep.
And I've heard statistics, I don't know if they're accurate, that something like only 25% of step families or second marriages survive because of all of the challenges. I don't know if that is accurate.
It's pretty close.
What are some of the biggest challenges that people face when they go into a step family situation?
Well, first of all, it's this lack of, I do want to correct some of the statistics just for a moment.
Yeah.
Just take a minute. So 1 out of 3, actually, it's probably a little higher now because that was close to 10 years ago when the Pew Research Center did that. But 1 out of 3 children under 18 lives in a step family, and it's probably higher now. That's millions of kids that are affected by this. Out of all the kids who are in step families, couples rather, in step family situations, 6 or 7 out of 10 will, within 2 to 5 years, wind up divorcing if kids are involved, because kids are often a big point of contention between second marriages and third marriages. So that's something that I didn't realize. I thought, oh, second marriage is going to be better than the first. People learn from the first. They learn to correct all those mistakes. But in fact, that's not the case, because there are new mistakes that you don't anticipate, that you didn't make they're not the same mistakes as you made in your first marriage or first relationship. And the other thing is that about 45% of American adults have a close step relationship in their lives. But it's just not something people talk about. It's like this big black hole, of information that is it. And I feel like it's part of my mission is to get the word out there and to help other step families, but also just to educate people about the fact that it's not the step family itself. It's all of these, I call them the minefields, that you can wind up stepping on if you're not aware of them. It's just an awareness that needs to happen. And divorce itself is also not the biggest problem for kids. It's family conflict. So whether it's a step family or a regular intact family, just parents having a lot of conflict is what stresses kids out the most. And in step families, there just happens to be a lot more reasons for conflict. So they tend to be very stressful for children.
And I know a number of people who are new step parents, and Alice just made a comment about having been a step parent 40 years ago and wishing she had had access to this information. But I know that one of the challenges is that often they're stepping into already formed ways of raising kids that may not be how they kids, and so they're trying to impose their parenting style in a situation where that's not often welcomed or tolerated very well, and they may not agree with how the kids are being raised. So that's one of the sources of that conflict you're talking about, right?
It's one of the big ones. Yeah.
And so what are some tips for people around how to navigate around that? What are some ways that when people are moving into that step situation, or they're in it now, what are some things that they can do with their partner, perhaps with the other family, with the kids? What should they be trying to do to help with that situation?
The first major minefield that I was going to talk about is the unrealistic expectations that people have, which affects their parenting. They expect that it's going to be, the bonding will happen quickly. The kids are going to be grateful to them for all they're doing as a step parent. That's not true. That takes a while. The bonding takes years. They're not going to treat a step parent like their parents. They're not going to feel good about their step parent trying to discipline them. And that really is something that shouldn't be attempted for the first few years. The major disciplining should happen by the biological parent, with the step parents supporting that, rather than trying to contradict their style of parenting, because they're coming into a situation that, like you said, is already established. There's a family culture that has already predated their entrance into the family, and that so having more realistic expectations is one thing. This myth of the Brady Bunch, everybody's probably seen the Brady Bunch at some point, or knows what it is at least. And that's not really what step families are like. They don't just suddenly all get along and pretend that there's no such thing as step, as the forget her name, the housekeeper used to say. Alice, there are no steps in this family. Well, yes, there are. You have to acknowledge the fact that kids are coming into this with a lot of losses and grief that hasn't been processed, because the change is usually way quicker than the kid would like. And they're put into unfamiliar family situations, unfamiliar environments, sometimes a house that's unfamiliar, a lot of times, especially if there's visitation going on. So making the kids feel supported and understood, and it's okay to miss their parent. It's okay to be sad sometimes, validating the kids' feelings rather than trying to make them feel like, oh, we're not going to talk about that, or, don't be sad, or, look how nice your step parent is. Look how much they're doing for you. That kind of thing kind of invalidates their feelings of, this is weird and I don't like it, and it feels uncomfortable. And I'm still sad about not having my other parent here all the time. So there's a big awareness piece that has to happen, that step families are not like regular intact families. There isn't this instant bonding. Kids are hardwired to be bonded to their biological parents, and they're going to want to maintain a connection to them and have those feelings be understood and supported. They don't want to be set straight on their biological parent and how nasty they were during the divorce. They don't need to know that stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and often parents will try and turn the kids, play the kids off of one another, which is just
right.
Terrible thing to do.
So harmful. It's so harmful.
To everything and everyone. And it's really lashing out of their pain. So you mentioned a bunch of minefields, and you've got some kind of illustration that you wanted to share as well.
Yes, I was going to do that in just a moment. I was just going to finish the thought on the unrealistic expectations and the instant bonding. That is the idea that, we should always just try and do things together and, cement this family. But in fact, it works much better if there's one-on-one time in the step families, at least for the first few years. That not that there's no family time together, but there should be separate time for the parent and their biological child. And there should be separate time for the step parent and the stepchild, because they need to create a relationship, which is not going to happen the same way if the biological parent is present. Their kid is always going to go hang out with the biological parent and not talk to the step parent. And that's just very common. So the more you plan for some one-on-one time, the better the transition is going to work. So that's what I wanted to say about that, the misunderstanding about how step families function. It's also a lot harder for girls, especially teenage girls, to make that transition. So that has to be done gently and not like all at once, like we're moving tomorrow, she's moving in and that kind of thing. So slower and gentler transitions are a really important thing. Dr. Gottman has, in his 40 years of research or so with couples, has found 7 major principles that really help couples strengthen their relationship so they can get through anything that might come their way. So I was going to share the screen and just show you his Sound Relationship House. You can also get a book of his called The 7 Principles for Making a Marriage Work, which I think are really useful. In a nutshell, here they are. Can you see them? So building love maps, it has to do with really getting to know your partner, what they like, what they don't like, what makes them happy, what makes them unhappy. Sharing fondness and admiration is learning to express what you appreciate about your partner on a regular basis, not taking it for granted that they know. This is one of the big tools, learning to say what you love about your partner without, feeling like it's corny or anything, but just daily ways of expressing fondness and appreciation goes a long way to undoing any kind of negative feelings that might come up. Turning towards your partner when they're upset instead of avoiding talking to them. And there's a lot of other skills involved with that. Developing a positive perspective or giving them the benefit of the doubt rather than making the kinds of negative assumptions that people make in step families, like, oh, they prefer their kids to mine, or, they're doing something that doesn't look good to you. So you assume that it's because they don't value you as much as they value their former partner or something, all kinds of false assumptions that people make, what he calls the negative override. So developing the positive override or positive perspective. Learning how to manage conflict is a big one. Learning how to dialogue about problems without getting triggered, without getting your emotions to such a high level that you can't really talk and you can't say nice things to each other. So those are some of the main skills. So I just wanted to share that with you because it's a whole toolkit that takes about, I would say, 12 weeks to really learn and wrap your mind around in sessions, about 12 weeks of sessions. Some people just learn it on their own, and bless their hearts if they can do that. But I think it's everyone should try, at least try to learn these skills because they've saved a lot of marriages. So I guess. So
tell us again, the author. Tell us the name of the book.
Dr. John Gottman, Gottman, the Gottman Institute. He and his wife, Julie, have a ton of materials on their website. If you look up the Gottman Institute, his book is called The 7 Principles. This is one of his many books, but I recommend this one for couples, especially new couples. The 7 Principles for Making a Marriage Work. It has all kinds of great exercises. He even has an app for these principles, which you can download free on your phone. So if you look at Gottman Institute, you'll find it. And then I have a giveaway, which you put it in the chat already, right?
No, it disappeared when we lost the connection. So you'll need to tell us again.
Okay. So here is, can I put it in the chat for you?
Yeah. Put it in the chat and then I'll put it in Facebook.
It's just successful strategies for stepparents.now.site, SITE.
Okay.
And that's my giveaway.
Tell them what it is. It's 10 do's and don'ts for step parents.
It's a 5 or 6 page handout that summarizes some of the things I talked about today, plus a lot more, and gives you some tools and tips, do's and don'ts, basically. 5 do's and 5 don'ts.
All right. Awesome.
To get you started.
All right. And how do people find out more about you?
You could go to my website, which is it's live now, but it's getting, some things are getting fixed, some glitches. It will be fixed by next week, but it's stepbystepfamilycoaching.com. And my email is morelovinghome@yahoo.com.
More loving word at yahoo.com. Awesome.
Yes.
All right. So tell us, what's one thing? Thank you, everybody, for putting up with all the glitchy internet. I know it's been very kind of jumpy here and lost us for a few minutes. And I'm frozen over on my screen. I don't know if I'm frozen on everybody's screen, but so my apologies for the glitchiness of this. But I know that there's been a few people. Sherry said this was great information, very valuable, that she really appreciates it. So tell us, Edina, what's one last thing you'd like to leave people with, especially those who might be step parents or dealing with all of this? What's one last message you'd like to leave them with?
2 things. One is that becoming a step family is not a one-time event. It's a process, and it could take several years. So be patient. And the second thing is really one of my favorite sayings from Dr. Terry Real, who's a famous couples therapist I've also been studying with. He says, nothing can be accomplished with harshness that cannot be accomplished better with kindness.
I think that's beautiful for this situation and pretty much every situation in life. So thank you so much for that reminder. Say it one more time. I really, really appreciate that quote. So say it one more time.
Nothing can be accomplished with harshness that cannot be accomplished better. I think he says with kindness and compassion.
Beautiful. Great reminder. Thank you for being here. Really
thank you, everyone.
For support, and really appreciate you just pointing out that, yep, it is hard. It is challenging. There's a unique set of challenges that people in the situation are facing. There's not a lot of support. There are some resources. So check out that book, check out Edina's gift for you, reach out to her and check out her offerings so that you can get some support for stepping through this whole other area where there's landmines and where there's all sorts of different kinds of challenges, because, we know in your heart you want to be a loving partner and a loving parent. And sometimes you just need some help to be able to
Absolutely.
do.
And if anybody knows or is involved with any groups of step parents, I would love to start a group actually online, some kind of a class or something that is available to more people than just one-on-one counseling.
I think that's a great idea. So by all means, if you have resources that you'd like to share that you've come across, please put them in the thread below or share them in the Facebook group, and reach out to Edina if you're interested or know of a group or are interested in being part of a group so that you can get some support, because community really helps. You know that old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. True. Yes. Now more than ever. So thank you for being here, Edina. Have a
Thank you so much.
Vacation, and everybody have a bodacious week. We'll see you all soon.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.